Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to another weekly reading wrap-up. I do not really have a preamble this week. I'm feeling very low energy today, so we'll see how this goes. I spent a lot of time reading and buddy reading this past week and it was a lot of fun, and I finished 4 things. The first one I'm not going to talk about here. That is The Difference Engine by William Gibson and Bruce Sterling. This is one of the SF Masterwork titles, and I'm currently undecided on whether I'm going to do a separate review video on this book because I have quite a bit to say about it, I think, or I might combine it in like a double review with another one of these titles that I plan on reading this coming week. So I will be talking about this more just in a later video for my SF Masterworks project. The next book I want to talk about is The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart. This is a children's novel. It's actually the first in a series. There are multiple books in the series now which I have never really heard of. I buddy read this with Maya from Maya Reads and quite enjoyed it. I really enjoy buddy reading with Maya. This was an alright book. It's about 4 children who pass a series of strange tests. They form the Mysterious Benedict Society and they are sent by Mr. Benedict to basically infiltrate a school and take down a supervillain who wants to like control the entire world. Hoping that summary doesn't give away too much of the plot. There's a lot happening here. I think that Maya and I agreed that we really liked the children and we liked their various brilliant but different ways of solving problems. There are a lot of puzzles and things to figure out in the story, and I really enjoyed seeing the children figure things out in really different ways. Like Rainey, who's kind of the main character, I think he's like the analytical, critical thinker in the group. He figures things out really quickly. Sticky has an amazing memory. He can read things really quickly and he can remember everything that he's heard and read. Kate basically ran away to join a circus. She's very physical. She can do all these physical acts. She's a really brave adventurer, the kind of person who always has the right tool at hand and can crawl through the air ducts and stuff to get where she wants to go. And then the littlest child of their group is Constance, and her ability seems to be just being very contradictory and difficult. So they're really fun characters. I do think that the villain who wants to mind control the world type of plot, it was really cliche, very stereotypical. It is a little bit contrived, a little bit unbelievable in parts, but the overall story was really quite fun. I didn't love it enough to continue with the series though, but I'm glad that I kind of took a break from reading other more difficult things to read this book. Sometimes you just need like middle grade fiction to cleanse the palate of all the difficult adult novels, I guess. Next up, I did another buddy read and I read the first book in this gigantic yellow omnibus, After Long Silence by Sheri Tepper. I read this with Joe from Final Blow Joe. We have now a long-standing, years-long tradition of buddy reading Sheri Tepper novels. I think there's only been one of her novels that I haven't read with Joe, and it's really fun to read a bunch of books by the same author with somebody and you have that same history with the books and you can kind of talk about all of them and compare them and stuff. So After Long Silence is, as far as I know, a standalone science fiction novel by Tepper. I think it was published in 1985, and there's another book by her called The Enigma Score, published in 1987, that I can't tell if that is a sequel to After Long Silence or if it's the same story but rewritten and published under a different name. If somebody knows, please tell me, because I've been very confused. The Enigma Score sounds like a title that could be given to After a Long Silence, and what I've read of the description of it, it sounds like the same description of After a Long Silence. But they seem listed as separate publications by her. Anyway, those details aside, After Long Silence is set on a planet called Jubal that's been colonized by humans, but their colonization efforts are hampered by the potentially sentient native life on the planet, which are these gigantic crystal mountains, basically. They're called presences, and they basically, unless they are calmed by the right music, the right sung syllables, they get very angry and they shatter and kill people. So there are these people called trip singers who have figured out which kind of nonsense songs to sing, these kind of passwords for different presences on the planet. And so they go with like the caravans and the traders and stuff and sing them through like these crystalline mountain passes to keep them from, you know, killing humans. And there's a corporation called BDL that basically has this monopoly on a slightly intoxicant food crop grown on the planet. It's in their interest to have the presences and anything else on the planet declared non-sentient so that they can go ahead with basically destroying everything on the planet, destroying the presences so that they can move around more freely. However, the characters in the story discover that actually there might be a plot to declare there to be no sentient life on the planet, native life on the planet, and despite the fact that there really are. So it has a really environmental theme. It's a story about humans trying to save life on a planet, even if that means that they'll have to leave their home. I really liked the world building here. I think Joe and I really agreed on that. We liked the premise, we liked the world building, the presences, the other native life called the Viggies, this whole concept of the trip singers and also the explorers was really interesting. I was really invested in that. And I think the overall plot with trying to save life on this planet, you know, from corporate greed and machinations and all of that, was really good. It was a really fun, very fast-paced story, and so much was happening in it. And that is the problem. There ended up being too many characters. There are so many named characters, so many different POVs in the story, and every single person or every single like couple has their own side plot. And this is not a lengthy novel. It's less than 300 pages long. So while I liked the core of the story and the main characters like Tasman and Claren and Jameson and Donatella, there was so much going on that distracted from all of that. It was difficult to keep a lot of the people separate, to remember who they were, even though I understood the basic plot all the way through. I think this is very typical of Tepper, where she has this like one really great idea that you can feel like she wants to center the story on that, but she can't help but throw in everything else that she wants to talk about. And some of it is forced and contrived. Her villains aren't just, you know, maybe greedy corporate stooges or whatever. They have to be truly evil, like sadistic torturers. It's very extreme. People can't just be kind of bad. The plot would be fine if they were just kind of bad. They have to be setting up cults that kill people. They have to be torturing people for sexual pleasure. They have to be really like sexually deviant and misogynistic and everything. It becomes a bit much. So when I got to the end of the book, I felt like it was a little bit forced. It was a little bit too contrived in places. It needed to be pared back a little bit. And yet it was a really enjoyable book. I was very satisfied with how it all ended. I was like, oh, that was a good story. So I don't think this is Tepper at her best by any means, but it's certainly not her at her worst. This is definitely one of her like average novels somewhere in the middle that's a good read, but possibly not going to be the best thing you've read in a year or something. And lastly, for this week, a book that I finished reading like 15 minutes ago, that is Girl Gone Viral by Alisha Rai. This is the second book in her modern love romance series. The first book is The Right Swipe, and I read that a little while ago, and I liked it, but I had some issues with the kind of like emotional manipulation that one of the characters did in that book. It was alright, but not amazing. And I kind of feel the same way about Girl Gone Viral, except for different reasons. I didn't really love the main characters in this. The two love interests are Katrina, who's a former model now dealing with basically PTSD and panic attacks, who's starting to venture out of her house, possibly back into the dating world, and she has a massive crush on her longtime bodyguard, Jazz. But at the beginning of the story, she has a conversation with another man in a cafe that is overheard and goes viral, and she's afraid that her identity is going to be revealed and her life intruded upon. So she escapes from the city in her home with her bodyguard, and they go to his family home, and the sparks are flying between them. I thought that both Jazz and Katrina were fine. They're actually both kind of sweet people dealing with their own issues. I did not like that Jazz had that very typical inability to express his emotions or his feelings. He tamps down all of his feelings. He doesn't communicate well, and it's like he doesn't really enjoy anything or like himself at the beginning of the story. This is a trait I've noticed in male leads in romance novels. It's a bit different here, but I'm just kind of tired of it, you know? I was kind of reminded of reading Defy or Defend by Gail Carriger a couple of weeks ago, where one of the things that I really liked about that story is that the two main characters actually don't take very long in finally talking to each other about how they like each other. They don't dance around it that long during the story. And I wish that had happened in Girl Gone Viral, because much of the book is just Jazz and Katrina knowing that they like the other one but not sure that the other one likes them, and it just goes on for too long. It just draws out that like mental anguish of, does she like me back, does he like me back, sort of thing. Like, just talk to each other, okay? So I mostly felt like the romance aspect of this book was a bit lukewarm for me. It didn't really push my buttons, I suppose. When I was reading The Right Swipe, I really enjoyed the backstories of the characters, which is kind of the B plot of the book. And in Girl Gone Viral, I didn't love the backstories quite as much. Katrina's was sort of familiar to me because she is a secondary character in the first book. Jazz's family history is interesting historically, like he comes from a Mexican Punjabi family, and I thought that whole story of his family was interesting, but once again we come back to basically how much he's repressed his emotions and hasn't been communicating with his family, and I didn't love that. So overall, this was an alright story, not my favorite romance, not my favorite B plots and everything, but it was alright. I kind of needed another romance novel to just relax into, let's say. I don't know if there are going to be any more books in the series. A third one hasn't been announced yet as far as I know, but I might continue reading them because they are good stories. So that is it for the books that I finished this past week. Basically a series of 3-star books that were fine, but not amazing, I suppose. So yeah, I'll be back to talk about the Difference Engine soon, I hope. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say this week. I just suddenly ran out of steam. Like, my brain is not producing more words, so I will leave it at that. Let me know if you have read any of these books, or if you want to, leave me a comment down below, and I'll be back to talk to you again very soon. And until then, bye. Wow, that was a really weird ending.